Welcome to The Explainer. You know that time of year when pretty much the entire country of India stops to listen to one single speech? Well, here's the thing. That speech is just the tip of the iceberg. Today, we're going to go deep and unpack the entire set of documents that make up the union budget, the real financial blueprint for over 1 billion people.
Yeah, we've all seen this image on the news, right? The finance minister, briefcase in hand, about to deliver a speech that's going to shape the economy for the whole next year. It's this big moment of political theater, but it actually affects everything, from the taxes we pay to the price of everyday goods.
But that speech, it's really just a summary. The real budget is this huge, complex collection of documents, a super detailed plan for the entire country. So, that brings us to our big question. What's actually inside all of it? Let's take a journey past the headlines and look inside the documents that truly lay out the nation's financial plan.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we're going to look past the speech to the basic idea of the budget. Then, we'll check out the nation's 3 main accounts, where all the money is actually kept. After that, we'll follow the money trail, both coming in and going out. And finally, we'll see how this whole thing actually becomes law.
Okay, first things first. Let's get right to the absolute heart of what the budget is. At its core, it's really just the nation's balance sheet.
When you boil it all down, the entire budget, with all its pages and numbers, is just a giant balancing act between these two sides. On one side, you've got receipts. That's every single rupee the government thinks it's going to get. And on the other, expenditure. That's every rupee it's planning to spend. The whole process is about managing this equation. Simple as that. So, how does a government manage all this cash? I mean, it's not like there's one giant vault somewhere. The main budget document, called the Annual Financial Statement, shows that there are actually 3 core accounts. And, understanding these is really the key to seeing how public money is handled. So think of it like this. The country basically has 3 main bank accounts. Each one serves a very different purpose, and more importantly, operates under its own set of rules. Let's break them down. First up is the Consolidated Fund. This is the big one. It's the main pot of money for the whole country. Pretty much all government revenue, we're talking taxes, profits, loans, it all goes in here. But here's the most critical part. Not 1 rupee can be taken out of this fund without Parliament giving the okay. This is the cornerstone of democratic control over public finances. So, what happens when there's an unexpected crisis? A natural disaster, for example. Well, that's what the contingency fund is for. It's the nation's emergency stash. The government can dip into this to respond right away without having to wait for Parliament to approve it first. And finally, we have the public account. Now, this one's a little different. This isn't really the government's money to spend freely. It's money that the government is holding in trust for the public. Think of your Provident Fund contributions. Since this money eventually has to be paid back to the people, it's handled completely separately. Okay, so we know where the money is kept. Now let's start following the money trail. Where does all that cash flowing into the main consolidated fund actually come from? The answers are all laid out in a document called the receipt budget. The receipt budget breaks down every single source of income in meticulous detail. You've got tax revenue, which is what most of us are familiar with. Then there's non-tax revenue, like profits from public sector companies. And finally, capital receipts, which could be something like the government getting paid back for a loan it gave out. All right, time for the other side of the ledger. We've seen where the money comes from. Now let's look at the absolutely massive task of planning how it all gets spent. And for that, we turn to the expenditure budget. And the scale we're talking about here is just immense. The expenditure budget has to map out the specific spending plans for 102 separate government ministries and departments. Every single one, from defense to education, gets its specific slice of the pie for the whole year. And just look at the range here. It really shows you everything the government is involved in. The budget lays out spending for national defense, agriculture, space exploration, schools, healthcare, railways, highways. It's all in there. Every number represents a national priority and, some really tough choices. Okay, so we've got a plan for income and a plan for spending. But how does this whole financial blueprint go from being a proposal to being legally binding? Well, that's where a couple of really crucial legal documents come into the picture. This right here is the legal muscle behind the whole budget, the finance bill. It spells out every single tax proposal. This bill gets debated, picked apart, and voted on by Parliament. Only after it passes does it become the Finance Act, which gives the government the actual legal power to collect our taxes. Without this, the whole budget is just a suggestion. But it's not just about spending for this year.
the government also has to show it's being responsible for the long run. And that's where the FRBM Act statements come in. You can think of it as a public report card. The government has to lay out its plan for managing its deficit, that's the gap between what it spends and what it earns, and its total debt. It's all about accountability.
So, to wrap it all up, the big takeaway here is that the union budget isn't one book. It's a whole library of documents that all work together. You've got the main ledger, the books for tracking money in and money out, the bill that turns it all into law, and the report card that keeps everyone honest. Each one has a very specific and very vital job to do.
So now you have the map. The next time you hear that big speech, you'll know it's just the prologue. The budget is a detailed story of a nation's choices and priorities, all told through numbers. The only question is, what story will you look for?